Hello and welcome. Today, we're going to jump in a time machine and head back nearly a century to Kwangdeok-myeon, Korea. We're going to get a feel for what life was really like, not by looking at big historical events, but through the objects people used every single day, their clothes, their shoes, and the very bowls they ate from. So let's dive in and see what these everyday items can teach us.
So, this is the big question for our journey today. Now, you have to remember, even though Western styles were starting to pop up in Korea, for a lot of people, traditional life was still very much the norm. So, what did that actually look and feel like day to day?
And the answer? Well, it starts right here, with the amazing hanbok. You can see that really distinct shape, a separate top and bottom, with this comfortable, loose fit. You know, even into the 1950s, if you look at old photos, you'd see a ton of people, especially older folks, still wearing this beautiful, traditional clothing.
All right, so let's start our tour in the gentleman's wardrobe. We're going to look at everything from the basic, everyday clothes to the hats that really signaled a man's place in society.
This right here breaks down the absolute essentials. The foundation of a man's outfit was the jagori, which is the top, and these loose-fitting pants called baji. And over that jagori, a man might wear a vest, or joki, just like you see here. It's a really practical, layered system.
What's so interesting here is just how functional all this clothing was. The jagori and baji were for every day. But if you were going out, or for a more formal occasion, a man would put on a DrJBHE, this long, really elegant overcoat. And of course, the fabrics changed with the seasons. You'd have breathable hemp in the summer and padded clothes for those cold, cold winters.
And you know, the look just wasn't complete without the right hairstyle. Men typically didn't cut their hair. Instead, they tie it up in this top knot, which was known as a sungtu. This was a really significant cultural marker for adult men during that time.
And sitting right on top of that sangtu was a hat. And let me tell you, a man's hat said a lot about him. The most iconic one is the gat, that black hat you see on the right, which was worn when going out. But there were others too, like the chorep for scholars or young boys, and the simpler padarangi, which was woven from bamboo for commoners. A hat wasn't just for style, it was basically a statement of who you were.
Okay, let's move on to our next gallery and see how this all comes together in the world of women's clothing. It was even more detailed and layered, just full of grace and all these subtle social cues.
Just look at these beautiful components. So, like the men's version, the women's hanbok had a jagori top, but it was paired with this long, flowing skirt called a chima. The real beauty of the hanbok is in its elegant lines and just the way all these layers work together.
You see, getting dressed was a process. It started with an undergarment, the sok joksam. Then came the jogori and chima. On their feet, women wore these really unique curved socks called baesan. And for a little modesty when leaving the home, a woman might use an outer skirt, a suge chima, to cover her face. Every single piece had its own place and purpose.
And here's a crucial point. You could often tell a person's station in life just by looking at the fabric of their clothes. A woman from a wealthy family, she'd be wearing a hanbok made of fine silk. But most ordinary people were durable, practical clothing made from coarse cotton or just plain cloth. And just like with the men's hats, a woman's hair accessories were incredibly important. For special occasions, you had these elaborate pieces like the hwagwon or jokjuri, but for everyday life, the most important accessories were ribbons and pins.
And this illustrates so brilliantly how hairstyle was a clear social signal. An unmarried woman wore her hair in a long braid, and it was fastened with a ribbon called a dengi. The moment she got married, she would tie her hair up in a bun and secure it with a beautiful pin called a binyo. You could know her marital status in a single glance. Isn't that fascinating?
Okay, so now let's look down from the hair all the way to the feet. Because just like the clothing, the shoes people wore told a story about who they were and the kind of life they were leading.
Wow, the contrast here is just night and day. On the left, you've got kachin, or flower shoes, beautifully embroidered and worn by upper-class women. Then on the right, you see gypsigi, simple straw shoes worn by common folk for their daily work. This one comparison just says so much about the social divide of the time.
And of course, there was a whole range of other footwear for different situations. Mitsuri were also for daily use, made from hemp. You had namakshin, which were wooden clogs, perfect for rainy days. And as modernization started to creep in, rubber shoes called gomosin became super popular because they were just so practical.
All right, we've covered what people wore from head to toe. Now let's step inside the home and see what was on the dinner table, because the bowls and containers they used were just as much a part of their daily life as their clothes.
A Korean meal was, and still is, a whole collection of different dishes all served at once. And that meant you needed a whole set of specific containers. As you can see here, there wasn't just one all-purpose bowl. Nope, there was a dedicated vessel for everything. This table gives us a great little summary. The jubal was for your rice, the bigger DrJBHE was for soup, the tiny little jongji was for sauces like soy sauce, and the jangchop was a plate for serving up all those delicious side dishes, or banchan. It was a very, very organized system.
And at the absolute heart of every single kitchen was this, the gamasot. This heavy iron cauldron was a total staple. It was used for making big batches of rice, for soups, for stews. This thing was the workhorse of the traditional Korean kitchen.
So, we've seen this really vibrant world of traditional clothing and tableware. But of course, the world was changing fast in the 20th century, and all of these traditions were about to meet modernity head-on.
This quote really captures that shift perfectly. While hanbok was once what you wore every single day, the convenience and the influence of Western clothing meant it slowly changed from a daily essential to something you'd wear on special occasions. It didn't disappear, not at all, but its role in society changed forever.
And that leaves us with one last thought to chew on. We've just explored the story of a time and a place through its clothes and its bowls. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? 100 years from now, what everyday objects from our lives, our smartphones, our sneakers, our coffee mugs, what will they say about who we were?